Good morning, everybody. Nice crowd this morning. I'm going to call the April 1st County Commission to order. Those all capable, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Bobby, would you call the order?
Commissioner Neil Younger,
Present.
Chair Michael Burgess,
Here.
Commissioner Nathan Liker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
On the order of business, I don't think there's anything change of the order. We do have 2 executive sessions, or just one. We got 1 executive session at the end of the meeting. Prior minutes, time to look at that. Any changes or corrections needed?
I have no changes. They look good.
Nothing. On the consent agenda,
I'll move we approve items A through G on the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
we've got a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. We've got a pretty good crowd. Issues from persons not on the order of agenda, so any topic that's not already listed, if you like to address the commission, please step forward. Everybody's here for the agenda items. Okay. Ms. Jennifer Taylor will come first to introduce new employees.
Good morning, Jennifer
Morning.
Taylor, Ellis County HR.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we are continuing to fill some vacant positions, and so we have 2 new employees that have started over the last month here today that we welcome to the county, and I will let their supervisors introduce them.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Brendan
Morning.
McKay, Ellis County Public Works Director. Over to my right, here is our new heavy equipment operator, Robbie Souther. We're happy to have him out there. And got all our heavy equipment operators filled again.
Awesome. Good.
Good deal.
Welcome, Rob.
Welcome.
Morning, Commissioner. Scott Brown, Ellis County Sheriff. With me, I have somewhere, okay, there he is, Brevin LaBarge. He was actually a police officer in Ellis, and he recently started, I believe, Monday? Tuesday. Lose dates. So he brings some experience with us. He's got worked there for 3 years, correct? 2?
I worked in Ellis for a year and a half, but before that I worked for Hayes.
So we're excited to have him, and he is hitting the ground running, so we're happy to have him. You have anything to say to him? All right.
Good
Welcome.
deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Next item on the agenda, maritime presentation, Ms. Caitlin Schmidt, 5th grade teacher, Roosevelt Elementary.
Okay. Like you said, I'm Caitlin Schmidt. I am one of the 5th grade teachers at Roosevelt.
I'm Erica Holloway.
And I'm Caitlin Knapp.
And we are here to talk to you about Ameritown. It's our project-based learning field trip that we take our 5th graders on. So it is located in Lenora, Kansas. It's always fun because when we take our kids, we double, if not triple, the population when we visit. This is our 5th year physically attending. It would be our 6th if it wasn't for COVID. Young Ameritown is sponsored by Next Generation Roundup for Youth. And we always give a huge shout out to Astor Bank because if it wasn't for their donation, we would actually not be going. So, here are just a few slides ahead if you guys want to follow along. We are actually on the Ameritown shops. Yep, we just finished that one.
So, to preface what Ameritown's like, it's their old high school, and the whole 2nd floor has been renovated to look like a city, and each of those rooms looks like a different shop. So we have the bank, which looks like a bank, container shop where they're building things, energy resources where they go and they fix things. We have the medical center. The digital media agency is new as of last year. The radio station, the Next Great Idea Shop, which was also new last year, the snack shop, the TV station, and then our town hall. And those are all of the positions that are available. We probably talk about it later, but our 2 positions that they run for are mayor and judge, and then the rest they interview for.
So the biggest thing about Ameritown and what I personally like the most about it is the financial literacy aspect of it. You always see the keyboard warriors on Facebook saying they didn't teach us that in elementary school or high school, and we are teaching our kids how to be an adult. How do you balance your money? How do you fill out a check register? How do you write a check? How do you sign your name in cursive? We talk about basic investing. They will do an investment skill analysis to decide what kind of risk taker they are. We talk about philanthropy and the importance of giving back. When we get to Ameritown, they are issued a debit card that they are responsible for the day. Just hitting all of the basic economics that turn us into successful citizens.
Sorry, this is my first year as a teacher, so I am learning all of it. But they do get to be in a form of government, so they go through the primary and the general election, and then like she was talking about, they go through the mayor and then judge campaigns, and then it teaches them the importance of voting and laws, and they've loved every bit of it so far.
In our previous years, we actually used Bobby Dryling's resources. So the voting offices were the official Ellis County voting offices that our students got to use, which really gave them a sense of this is important. They definitely took it a little more seriously. The last couple years with our renovations, we did not have time or even storage for the extra voting resources. So next year we'll be in contact again.
So job interviews, like I said, so we have the 2 that they run for and they get voted in, which they don't find out until after all this job interview things. So they take a skills assessment, see what they might be good at, and then they fill out a job application and they write a cover letter and all of that, and then they get to interview with community members. One-on-one, nothing scary. They're all a little bit nervous, but we're like, it's just like a go and talk about yourself kind of thing. You guys are great at that. So they do that. They put down their top few jobs, and then even the people that ran for mayor and judge do that. We always tell them, like, at Ameritown, that's your one job, but like our mayor has another job usually. So it's important to get those skills.
The importance of just how to give a proper handshake.
Yeah.
Our community support, like I said, Ameritown would not be Ameritown without the community. So Astor Bank is a huge support. Every year we have our mayor come in and talk with our kids. We have various community members. I think this year we have the most community support, thanks to David. And then we've used the county clerk's office as well. So just some of our shout outs. And with this, we want to increase our community. That's why we're here. Us 3 teachers can only do so much. So talking to the right people and getting more support.
So entrepreneurship was one of the new things last year. That's the Next Great Idea Shop. So Sean Musel and then Grow Hayes have presented. They complete a business skills assessment, personal assessment, and then lifestyle skills assessment. They then create a detailed business plan. They're given like 3 or 4 different options to choose from, and from that they like grow in their head this business, which they can then take to Ameritown. They're not actually running the business that they create in their head, it's just giving them good practice. But in that shop, then there on the right, there's the like order slips. Students can order the little Ameritown keychain. There's like little felt bags that they can customize, and they fill out the order slip and the students do that. And I'm trying to think what the other, a customized bracelet. So that's their Next Great Idea Shop.
So some additional prep work. Ameritown encompasses 71 adult vocab words. So what does it mean if you overdraft? What does it mean to withdraw? What's an endorsement? Just real life adult words that the kids have to learn and memorize. We start with a pretest. We go through 28 lessons. We create postcards to talk about the importance of mailing and how to buy a stamp. Where does your stamp go? How do you put a return address on? Where does it go? Things like that. Risk assessment to know which type of investment that they would like to pursue. They get a design a shoe, which takes them back to free enterprise and the power of spending your money where you want to spend it. more skills assessment to know which job will fit them best, and then we constantly address checkbooks and we practice our check registers. We are doing that every week until we go to Ameritown in May. So just really drilling in what it is to be an adult, a successful adult.
The day before we go is when they find out their jobs. If they've been running for the mayor or judge, that's when they get to find out along with all of the other jobs. Once they know their job, then they hold a business staff meeting. They create a logo, a slogan for their advertising, which gets sent off to the different businesses there. That way they can be put on the TV or the social media to be projected there for everybody to see. They get basic job training based off of if they're selling things, if they're a manager, if they're an accountant. So it's very individualized for their job. They get their payroll prepared, and then they preview the agenda for the day at Ameritown. The mayor creates an opening ceremony speech. I know Jackson was our mayor one year, and he loved it. He rocked it that day. They also prep their checkbook register and deposit slips for savings account and paycheck, because when we get there, they get to sign up for different breaks. So when they go on their very first break, their first stop is to go to the bank and put their paycheck into their account. So they need to have that ready in their account now, all the stuff good to go. We review more checkbook practice. We have a banking Jeopardy game, and we just review everything that we've talked about, so they have a successful day there.
And to go back to, we start this curriculum in January, and we don't go until May, so it is constant review for them. So then the day of, these are just some different snapshots over our last 5 years, or I guess 4 years. Some different community members that have been there, the different roles that the students take on. Some excitement. And then the day after we get back, we get a copy of their bank statement, and then the students sit down with their bank statement and their check register, and they compare. Did they do accurate recording of the money that they spent? It's a good learning curve of how well did I balance my money? The businesses then get to meet and they decide if their business had a profit or a loss. They get to evaluate how their personal choices impacted their businesses. If they just kept all of their money that day, other businesses were lacking in those funds. So talking about, for Ameritown, yes, we want to spend our money, but in real life, do we always want to spend all of our money right then and there? Just learning curves. We also take a post-test to compare it back to our pre-test to see the growth and their rate of success. We spend a good chunk of our day writing thank you cards to everybody who helps us in the journey. And then the students get to review their investment and they decide or see how much money they were able to make. And then there are Employee of the Day awards that are selected by the shop managers, and those are given out to our students also. So like we said, the reason we are here today is we want to bring awareness to what we are doing at Roosevelt. We are currently the only elementary school in the district that is doing it. I know Holy Family is starting their first year, this year going. Wilson has gone before in the past. But just, it's word of mouth. So we need more people celebrating it, talking about it, and of course getting more community support, helping us with Ameritown, making it successful. That way we're not just constantly asking our same group of volunteers. And then also looking into funding if there's any local scholarships or grants that we offer within the county that could help us. We do get to utilize the Dane G. Hansen. When we first started going, it was $40 per student to attend. And thanks to Dane G. Hansen, it's now down to $20. But when we are sitting at 125 students next year, that's a chunk of change for our students to get to experience this. So that is our presentation. Do you guys have any questions?
I think it's great.
We love it.
And thank you for presenting it. I didn't know it. I had heard rumblings of it, but I didn't know exactly what else it entailed. So thank you for educating us.
Yeah, definitely getting it out there.
I was the same way. I didn't know it was going on, and Caitlin's husband was Cody's, our son's best friend, and one night we were sitting around and she was telling me all about this, and I said, what? And said, you know, balancing a checkbook, that's our future. So Teachers, keep it up. And the second question is, who's teaching the students while you ladies are here?
We have the best of the best for ourselves,
Okay.
so we won't be here
But-
for long. We've got to get back to them.
I think it's something that we should look into, getting close here to the budget cycle, so something that we may be entertaining because it is our future coming up. And not only that, are they all catching on to it pretty quick?
Yeah, the words, we make it engaging. Nobody ever wants to learn what an endorsement is or what it means to overdraft. But we've got our teacher ways that we make it fun and engaging. There's constant review games that they're playing. It's funny because last week we were practicing our check register again, and so many of the students were like, wow, this is so fun. Can we write more checks? Right, it's fun when it's not your money that you're spending. So it's fun now because it's
Okay.
it's relevant but not relevant for them.
I'm asking that question because if they're catching on to that, then maybe we need to get
More.
some government
Yeah.
stuff in. I think Mr. Darren Myers would be happy to come in and do a little presentation on
Yeah.
something like that. Just, it's our future. We talked about it, and get these kids educated.
Yeah. We have David coming in on Thursday. Our students actually right now, when they're not taking their state assessment, they are learning about a business plan this morning, and then David will come in on Thursday and talk about his role with the community and business plans and Grow Haze and the micro factory and all of that. So definitely wanting more community support because it's always nice for them to hear from other people and not just us. So Darren has my email too, so if anybody wants to add it on to our calendar.
They can see how what they're learning for Ameritown is then used in real life.
Okay. You know, that night when you and I had visited her, her eyes just lit up when I said,
I know,
would
I
you
told
come
Darren.
to a meeting and do a presentation just to get it
We'll talk about this till
out?
we're blue in the face.
Yes.
Definitely.
I appreciate it.
So I'm curious, somebody runs for judge, so what does the judge do? Can they break laws in Ameritown and the judge comes in, or?
So the judge not enforces, the judge oversees the police officers, and the police officers are walking the hallways, making sure nobody's running, making sure they're not breaking the laws. And if a ticket is written, then it goes back to the judge. On one of the previous slides, there was a little kid with a vacuum. He did not have enough money to pay for his court fee, so he had to do community service, which turned into vacuuming the town hall. So
Okay.
the judge can actually break a law when they're on break. If they are too quick in the hallway or not following the rules, then they could get a fine as well.
Very good. Well, I've seen this firsthand. As you mentioned, my oldest son went through the program. When he's in 5th grade, he did run. He was elected the mayor. But I know through the process, as you say, in January throughout, I think it's a great program that does teach kids, which I believe is as valuable as the civics lessons of government and your public-private interactions that makes our communities great. And so I think it's a great program. I really do appreciate you coming in, giving us more information and letting the community know a little bit more about this program, because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very
for
much.
listening to us.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we got former Ellis County Attorney, Mr. Robert Anderson. And speaking as somebody that knows how to go from public to private and use their skills and that they probably learned in 5th grade on how to conduct themselves.
Yeah, I was thinking how much I would have loved that as a 5th grader.
Yeah.
I was always in like student government growing up, and so that would have been right up my alley. And by the way, Darren, if you get roped into that, giving a presentation and you want to partner, I'd be happy to help with that or can present. Good morning, Robert
Morning.
Anderson.
Good morning.
Former Ellis County Attorney. I am here, well, I'll start out this way. As county attorney, from January 2021 through January 13th of 2025, it was very important to me, and I took pride in being a good steward of taxpayer dollars, trying to never ask for anything more than what we needed, trying to come in under budget, those sorts of things. The first 3 years was definitely successful at that, very proud of that. And then unfortunately, the 4th year of my term, my office came in over budget. And so I've been feeling kind of lousy and embarrassed about that. And that's the purpose of me being here this morning, is to essentially issue an apology to the taxpayers, to the commissioners, and to anyone else who that would have, either affected or potentially affected. For example, Darren, I know you do a ton of work with the department heads and helping get the budget prepared for presentation to the commission. And so insofar as that creates complications, I do apologize. I think part of any good apology is sincerity. I can't tell you how, I don't know, I guess surprised and frustrated I was to see the year-end budget numbers and saw that we were over. Maybe not every day, but certainly weekly since then. This is something that's like popped up back in my mind. I'm just like, it's like just, I don't know, kind of like a black eye on what was otherwise something I was very proud of. So, I don't know, maybe some people think it's not that big of a deal, but it is to me. I want to explain kind of how it happened. So with the Ellis County Attorney's Office budget, 95% of it is staff. And so really, like, the only way to really go over budget as the department head of the Ellis County Attorney's Office is if you are overstaffing your office. And that's exactly what I did. Partway, maybe July, August of this last year, had the opportunity to bring on a 5th attorney. We were only budgeted for 4. This 5th attorney, Josh Becker, is a young man fresh out of law school, moved to Ellis with his wife. Had the opportunity to hire him on with the knowledge that for sure I was leaving and another attorney, James Rutherford, was leaving. Kind of a side note, Josh Becker, what an incredible hire he has been and will be. Just an incredibly intelligent young man. Very, very skilled as an attorney, even though he's so young in his profession. He is an asset to the Ellis County Attorney's Office, to this community, and he's going to be one for a long time. So definitely glad to have brought him on board, but brought him on board with the understanding or with the belief that James Rutherford, another attorney in the office, was going to be exiting by October 1. James Rutherford ended up staying with the office through January 13th. And so that overlap of having 5 lawyers in the office is kind of not dollar for dollar why we went over budget, but it is a super majority of how we went over budget. So not a total frivolous spending situation, and it's not as though I set up like a massage room or something in the county attorney's office, but that's how we got there. And even though that ultimately was like an investment in the office and in the community, having those staff members there, if I could go back in time, and I think you know this about me, my preference would have been to come to the commission, ask for that budget authority before getting there. I would never deliberately or purposely spend money that we didn't have, and so that is my apology, and I think that's everything I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate the apology and the sincerity, and I know there was a number of cases that your office was working through at the time, so I'm sure the community can appreciate that, the speediness that things were getting done and processed.
I did want to add one more thing. I think another essential component of a true apology is making amends, somehow making it right. While I don't think that I can make it dollar for dollar right with the county, there are I don't know, a dozen cases or so that I've held on to following my term that I've continued to prosecute as a special prosecutor appointed. On all but 3 of those, I am doing at no charge to anybody, and so there is and I don't know, I haven't been keeping track of my time or anything like that, but there is some amount of me trying to give back unpaid to the county. And so hopefully that, I don't know if there's furious taxpayers out there listening to this right now, but hopefully that is some amount of making amends.
Very good.
Yeah, apology accepted, and it takes a real person to come and do what you have done. That if you felt guilty, but it happens all the time. A lot of stuff goes over budget, so I totally understand it. And
Sure, I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
Thank-
your apology is very, very sincere. Nobody here asked for you. You came on your own.
Yeah.
You know, validity to come tell us. We probably really hadn't thought about it until you approached to be on the agenda to speak about it. So that takes a lot of effort on your part, and very sincere as far as I'm concerned. And I think we knew going into last year as you were transitioning out and the lack of attorneys throughout rural Kansas, that there was kind of that transition of trying to make sure we're staffed appropriately. So I think your service to the county in the years that you served proved that you took taxpayers seriously. So thank you
Thank you.
again.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you for your cooperation, your collaboration, your support throughout the term, and thank you for today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, update on real estate values for tax year 2025, Mr. Eugene Rupp.
Morning,
Morning.
Commissioners. Eugene Rupp,
Morning.
Ellis County Appraiser. I just wanted to give you an update on what real estate valuations are doing for tax year 2025. And I don't know if you want to go to the slides, Darren. Okay. So what I've kind of done here in attempting to explain what's doing in 2025 is also shown what's happening in 2024. So initially here, I wanted to start with some basic information about the county, how our parcel count is breaking down for 2025 is we have a total of 16,641 parcels. That number is skewed just a little bit. Our actual real estate parcel count is 15,992. You'll see the line for the personal property manufactured homes. We did have to, we had an issue with our software vendor we were using to value mobile homes this last year, and we ended up having to move those from that other software system into our real estate valuation system to get them to value correctly. So that total valuation count of 16,641 does include 649 personal property manufactured homes. But as you looking at that, you can see obviously there's the majority of our parcels here in Ellis County are residential parcels. That's parcels that have a home on them. So we're just 9,702 parcels that are residential, followed by agricultural use, and then commercial, and then the farm home sites also would be residential use. So kind of a breakdown of the different parcel counts and how that breaks down throughout the county. What you will see in looking at the next slide at 2024, where, like I said, if you remove those personal property homes, we're at 15,992. For 2024, we were 15,876 parcels. So that change in the parcel count is largely due to new plats, things like the Grove coming on, the subdivision out of Yosemento, things of that nature. So just kind of shows that Ellis County is still adding plats, parcels to kind of grow the county. Any questions on these two specific slides? Okay. So kind of the next slides here, and again, comparing 24 and 25, you'll see for 2025, the total valuation real estate-wise for the county is $3,780,355,500. We are up from that valuation. Our total valuation has increased from 2024, where we were $3,644,458,000. So we are seeing an overall increase in valuation in the county this year. The different charts here, you can kind of see how that actually breaks out, what each class is as a percent of that whole valuation. A couple things I always want to point out is from 24, our exempt properties were 16.7% of valuation, and going into 2025, we actually have more exempt properties this year, so that total valuation that is exempt from taxation is now 17.21% of the total real estate value in Ellis County. Another one of interest there is ag use values, which are basically agricultural land. In the state of Kansas, ag land is not valued at market, it's valued at ag use, which uses an 8-year sliding average of the landlord's share of net income. And this year, with the years that are added on, the years that are coming off, we did see a drop in ag land values. Primarily in cropland, native grass properties stayed fairly flat this year, but overall the cropland values did go down a little bit. So, if you look there, you'll see in 2025, our ag use value totaled $51,396,760, 1.36% of the total value. But in 2024, we were actually at $55,346,000. So, we did see a drop in ag values of $3,949,870. Almost $4 million in ag value did come off the total this year with that change in ag use values. Any questions on these slides?
On the exempt status on these slides, would that include like the new public works facility that the county owns and
Yes, it
constructed?
would. Yeah, so this would be your churches, your schools, Fort Hayes, the hospital, and then anything new that has been exempted, which would be like the new public works building.
Would it include like RHID and those kind of programs for?
No, this would
Okay.
actually have to be classed as an exempt. They'd
Okay.
have to apply to the Board of Tax Appeals for exemption. These would
Okay.
be your city-owned properties, your county-owned properties, your church-owned properties,
Okay.
school-owned properties. So we are seeing a lot of new construction, at Hayes High. Obviously, that's going to be a lot of valuation, but it is exempt from taxation. So it does contribute to the overall increase in values in the county, probably substantially. You're talking millions of dollars of construction added there, but it is not taxable. It is exempt. It falls in that exempt class. So, seeing as there were partial construction this year, they'll continue that through next year. It's very possible that percentage of the total valuation that is exempt it may increase again next year.
When do the final valuations of those buildings or of any building come on into effect?
So the valuations are always effective January 1st of every year. We did get those mailed out March 17th. We did get the extension from the state of Kansas from March 1st to March 17th to get those out. But the valuation always is effective January 1st of every year.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna ask, this is kind of a dumb question, admittedly, but what would be the purpose of valuing like the schools if they're exempt anyway? How do you value them? Do you do comps of other schools? And again, kind of what's
So I'll kind of start with residential properties. With residential properties, we develop a cost approach. We would also develop a comparable sales approach, looking at homes that have sold and making comparison adjustments. Commercial properties, which most of this exempt would fall into that commercial class were it not exempt. It's hard to find comparable properties that are close or nearly identical. So we rely mainly on the cost approach to value the commercial properties. We do some income analysis. We send out questionnaires every year to property owners trying to get income and expense information. I would imagine we get 1% to 2% of those questionnaires returned to us. We don't get a lot of income and expense information to develop very credible income and expense analysis reports. So we do rely heavily on cost approach when valuing these properties. Now, alluding to why we're valuing exempt properties, we are statutorily required to value all properties in the county, no matter what class they're in. The only exception to that would be public utilities. We do not value public utilities. The state of Kansas values those. Those would be your railroads, your telecommunication companies, Midwest Energy, your gas companies, things of that nature. The state of Kansas values those because they cover so many counties. They take on the valuation of that. As for why we're valuing the exempt properties, sometimes exemptions expire. Sometimes in the event of Lincoln School, it's an exempt school property, but it is selling here and it's going to get put back on the tax rolls. So we do have to keep that information current, correct, and put values on those properties in the event, so that in those events that something loses its exemption or changes from an exempt status back to a commercial or residential or whatever, we have the information there for that. And while we never hope to actually need it for this purpose, it could come into play for disaster declarations, things of that nature. If an unfortunate event, tornado, large fire or something were to hit the city of Hayes, that information would be necessary to help come up with damage estimates, things of that nature. And at that point, class doesn't really matter. It's just the numbers you need to know.
Okay, thank you.
So I will kind of move on to the next slides here. And while some of this is relevant to valuation, some of this is just general information I wanted to share with you in the public. But this one here is the first slide you'll see overall for 2025, and this is looking at all classes and all valuations across the entire county. The median, which is the midpoint of values, so you could have value changes from 0 all the way to 40%. If you arrange those all in a grid and looked at the midpoints, that 3% is where we're at for the county. So overall valuation trends this year show that overall the county went up 3%. But by this slide, you can kind of see how that breaks out over those different classes. Again, we do look at every property individually, every class individually, through the analysis every year, and we set those values specific to those properties. So you will see that the different classes, the different groups, different locations may go up or down more or less than the general trend, but this is just showing the overall county trend of 3%. And you can see how that breaks out a little bit there. Vacant land increased. The median increase was 9.6%. The exempt properties, 2 classes there. We kind of have IRBX, which are economic development properties, EDX, and then just the regular exemptions. Those you'll see went up 7.6, 4.9. Our class other, we don't have a lot of those. I think we have less than 5 properties in the county that are actually a class other. So that went up, excuse me, 4.9%. I do want to point out on the ag use there where it shows 4.4. These presentations are actually developed through the Assessment Connect tool that in the past I've talked to you. Lisa and I have helped develop this through the state of Kansas and Tyler Technologies that actually creates all these narratives. When we did this, I don't think they thought of the concept of things going backwards. So that 4.4% on ag use is showing it changed 4.4%. But the values went down. It's still a 4.4% change, but that's actually a negative number. So it's just in how you would interpolate those results. So they didn't anticipate negatives coming in. So I am working with the state and the vendor to try and get some clarification on that. So in the future, that shows more precisely that people can understand that. But like I said, it did change by 4.4%, but it actually went down. Farm home sites would be part of our residential value. Overall, that was 3.3. Overall for the county, residential 3.3 and commercial 2.7. So generally speaking, countywide residential commercial properties, it was roughly 3%. In the next slide, Darren, if you just go to 2024, you'll see where in 2024, the change from the prior year was 4.7% overall. So just the same graphics here, the same breakdown. I just wanted to kind of point out that our market is slowing down a little bit this year. We are seeing some changes. So overall in 2024, we saw a 4.7% increase. For 2025, due to market conditions, that has come down a little bit, and we see a 3% increase overall. So, any questions on those graphics? On the next page, what I do is I try to break it down by zip code a little bit. This kind of gives you an idea of what's happening in a specific area. So it's not going to be specific to the city limits. You know, if you get to the city of Ellis, you know, you've got what's in the city, but also what's surrounding the city. The first one, it's kind of interesting this year. The zip codes kind of from surrounding counties kind of intrude into Ellis County a little bit. We had a couple of new homes constructed up in the very northeast corner of the county. So it really skews those results where those in the Natoma zip code, you know, saw a 700 and some % increase. But in reality, I think that was actually one parcel of land that saw a valuation. New construction on it that changed that. So that 700% is all attributed to new construction on one parcel. And we didn't have anything there before. As you look at the prior year, you know, that one didn't actually even have Natoma in there. So. The other ones you can kind of see as we go down, again, that 3% overall, but this breaks it out by the zip code. So you'll see as you kind of look through what you're going to see first is some of those rural properties. Catherine at 9.4%, Shinshin 6%, Ellis 6%, Victoria 6%, Walker 6%, Pfeiffer 5.9%, McCracken, very southwest corner of the county, 4%. The no values would kind of be in that rural. Those are ones that we're actually in a cleanup process on of trying to find the correct zip code that it goes into. So that hopefully in the future that no value goes away. It's an ongoing cleanup process we're doing with our data. And then Hayes at 3%. So Hayes obviously has, as large as it is, has an overwhelming impact on what's happening countywide. So the general takeaway from this I really want to kind of explain is within the city of Hayes, 3% was really typical. But once you get outside of Hayes, our rural properties, our smaller communities, we're seeing greater appreciation in values with what sales we're actually doing over the last year. So you get into Ellis, Victoria, Shinshin, your small towns, an increase of 6% was much more likely in those areas versus Hayes. That 3% Hayes overall just adds more weight when you look at it county-wise and pulls it down to 3% for the entire county. If you would go to the next slide there, Darren, this is again showing what we did last year, that 4% total for the county. And I'm not going to go through every one, but you'll actually see as you kind of look at those smaller towns and stuff last year, we were seeing a lot of 12%. So we saw a lot of value increase in those smaller towns. Last year, this year, that has dropped about in half. We are still seeing a greater increase in sale prices and what's happening in those smaller towns in Hayes. I think some of that, again, revolves around affordability of homes and lack of homes on the market, pushing people into those smaller communities, which does in turn drive those values up a little bit. But overall, the takeaway from this is that we are coming down again. We're seeing values kind of drop a little bit year to year from 24 to 2025. On to the last slide there. These I just included more for just some general information. I know you hear a lot from Doug Williams, David Klingon on what's going on as far as home building in the county and housing shortages. So the blue lines here represent the number of homes built over 20-year periods since Hayes first started back in the 1800s. So you can kind of see, and you know, they're off to the left there, you'll see how many thousands were built over those 20-year periods. So you can see Hayes saw some exponential growth there starting from the 1800s all the way up until about the 1960s, 70s in there. After that point in time, the number of new homes being built, you can see by those blue lines, over 20-year periods, the number of new homes being built has decreased over the years. Well, from when we hit that peak in the 60s and 70s. So the gold bars, yellow bars, that represents total homes in the county. And again, this is not looking at commercial, just residential properties. So again, it's just informational. You'll see, you take into account the residential homes plus the farm sites. We're just a little over 10,000 residences in the county total, but you'll see that the number of new homes being built. I just wanted to share this information. Thought it might be relevant with what you hear from Grow Hayes and housing shortages in the county. The final slide, again, just kind of touches on what was being built. I just wanted to share this as well. It's not very important, but you'll see that the majority of the homes throughout the county are ranches. The next one's the old style, the bungalows. That would typically be what you saw built in those first years from the 1800s to the 1950s. So nobody builds that style anymore, but just a breakdown of what is being built. Interestingly enough, the one that you'll start seeing here is that barn dominium. We're seeing many more of those being built throughout the county. So that total of 49 of those throughout the county has probably been over the last 10 to 15 years. So I do expect that particular style of home to continue increasing. So, again, not relevant to the value, but just some information I wanted to share about what's going on in the county. Any questions?
What do you see, are you seeing this trend carrying through to 26? Is that where some of this conversation is leading?
So, as far as the real estate market, we analyze all the sales that come in. We get a copy of every sale that happens in the county. We analyze them to determine if they met open market conditions or not. And the ones that do meet open market conditions actually go into our final analysis. What we are seeing overall, and if I were to look at my preliminary numbers, I think in 2024, our values were running about 96% of sale price. So we were very close as far as the values we set on real estate, residential homes, to what they were actually selling for. Again, a little bit underneath, but 96 is a very good place to be overall. So it kind of shows we weren't overvaluing those, and I will get probably to those slides here in June, the final numbers. These are just kind of some preliminary numbers. Our commercial valuations, we were closer to 80%, meaning that the values we set on commercial are typically about 80%. The sample set on that was about 10 sales, so it can only take 1 or 2 sales in that set to kind of skew that number. I don't feel like our actual commercial value to actual sale price is at 80. We're probably in the closer to the 90, but simply one sale in a sample set of 10 can skew your numbers a little bit. So overall, 80 is still okay. I do hope to improve that over the next year, but this does kind of reflect, I think, what you hear from other places, what you're seeing in the market itself. People are getting a little tighter with their money and what they're wanting to spend. During the COVID years, it was not, it was actually starting to become a little more common to see people bidding on homes and driving up home values, paying more than asking price because of the unavailability of homes. We're not seeing that anymore. If we look at MLS listing prices to actual sale prices and our values, we're seeing that the market has kind of corrected itself a little bit. I think it's actually healthier that you're not having these bidding wars. A lot of that I would actually attribute to Grow Hayes and what they've been doing, getting some new homes on the market, kind of alleviating that shortage we're having. So what they're doing, I think, is a step in the right direction. It helps the overall valuation. It helps when you have availability of homes. You're not bidding on that smaller subset. You've actually got more to choose from. So I think we are seeing that. The mortgage rates obviously play a little bit into what people are willing to pay for a home. So I think all of those things and others are what you see reflected in that 3% this year versus 4% in the prior year.
Okay.
One thing I did want to add, just for public information, like I said, we did get notices out on March 17th. If a taxpayer or property owner has questions about the valuation notice, feel free to contact our office. On the back side of that sheet, it'll explain the protest process. If somebody wants to protest the value, have a hearing, they always have 30 days to do that. So the final day to actually call our office, set up an appeal, would be April 15th. That's 30 days from the date we mailed. So if they don't want to have a hearing, just have general questions, we're available for them for that purpose as well.
Very good. I don't have any questions. Thank you for, as always, you got a wealth of information. I appreciate it, and I think the public, if they see the information, appreciates too. And I have found that your office is very accommodating to anybody that wants to come in and ask questions or file a protest. You're there to serve.
That's what we're
so.
there for, you know. May not always give them the answer they want, but we will always try it as best we can to answer their question, give them as much information as possible. You know, we are a public service, so
right.
we want to be available to them.
Good. Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, City of Ellis Chip Seal Project, presenting Mr. Brendan McKay, Public Works Director.
Morning again, Commissioners. Brendan McKay, Ellis County
Morning.
Public Works Director. Before you, is a request from the City of Ellis to assist with our equipment and with labor to achieve their chip seal and asphalt road maintenance for the year. The amount that they're wanting to do, it'll take a day to lay out, but in all, it'll probably take about 3 days for our county to mobilize equipment over there, lay out the asphalt, and demobilize and move to our own project locations. Traditionally, we do these projects during harvest time. We're trying to stay off the main roads, so we're not affecting and impacting the ag community as much. This shouldn't impact any of the work that we have planned this year, and this is a request that they've made continually over the years that we've assisted them with. The one thing that we found in the request, part of Washington Street, the aggregate total they had was correct, but the amount of oil, that was for the entire stretch based on the estimate. What we should be for our driving lanes would be about 1,500 to 1,800 gallons of oil, not the 2,900 gallons of oil that they have in the request letter. Because that 1,500 to 1,800 would cover the 24-foot driving lanes through that stretch.
Have you contacted the City of Ellis and informed them of the,
No, I don't know who took over for John. I believe
Okay. Right.
Steve Homburg took over potentially. I have a number on my desk that I'm going to give him a call after this.
okay?
Yeah, that kind of was my only question in a way. I know they have their public works for the city is different, and I didn't know if that would matter or change anything, or,
I don't know if it'll change anything on their end.
okay,
It might have just been a mistake in the calculation part.
okay.
Because the aggregate tonnage works out for the driving lanes of our portion. Don't think they used that correct area for their asphalt calculations. Because if they did, that's shooting it like 58 to 62 hundredths, which is about 1.6 times the normal application rate, which wouldn't leave a good product in the end.
Okay.
In Argonne, what kind of turnaround is on that till they can give you?
This aggregate should be the same if they're using the
Okay.
same stuff from last year. We always take samples every year to have
Okay.
them run in their lab, just to make sure that the oil is going to adhere properly.
Okay.
Because you have differences in your oil, so when I come here later to get a PO for all the oils we're purchasing, there's CMS, CRS. All that means is C is the cationic. If there's no C designation, it's anionic, so it's a positive or negative charge. So you have to be careful with your oils to make sure you haven't used dissimilar charges, and as well as your aggregates. Some of your aggregates are negatively charged or positively charged, just minute, but that minute change can affect its embedment in the aggregate. It's like magnets don't don't attract, they repel. If your aggregate's positively charged and use an anionic emulsion oil, it'll cause those chips, can cause them to float and not embed fully, and they'll break off and wear off faster.
Okay.
So the big thing is when you change from a supplier of your aggregate getting the test to make sure it's compatible with the oils that are provided. Because they can provide any type of oil, but you don't generally change from application to application unless you have a material defect.
All right. I move to approve Public Works to assist the city of Ellis in completing their chip seal project utilizing county labor and equipment.
Before I second that, is this something, the dollar amount you had in here is a 58.75, and currently the financial impact shows the 68.75. Is that all accounted for in your budget?
Yes, we'll be able to make it work. I fat fingered a number in there.
Okay. Okay, well then I will second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Just remind me, do we usually have a financial impact, or is that because we're splitting one of the roads this year?
Because we're splitting one of the roads this year. Generally, we don't have any financial
Okay.
impact. It's just our labor and time.
Okay,
Is that financial impact, is that part of our 12-mile plan?
No, but we'll make it work.
Okay,
okay,
We were able to seal with carryover oil last year a portion of a roadway that was going to be on this year's docket. So that we'll shift the money for that mile because there's no need to relay something that was just done a year previously. We'll shift the portions from that mile for this portion here.
okay.
okay. Okay, any other questions?
I have no further.
We got a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 No opposed, passes 3-0. Continuing on, St. Jacobs Street right-of-way vacation.
Yes, sir. So a few weeks ago, I brought forward the request from one of the residents to vacate a portion of St. Jacob Street in Catherine. It's a portion between his two lots that was never constructed. There's no intention to construct there because they're putting a home in that location, and their utility lines and septic lines would be going through the road, what is the right-of-way there. There's no concerns from the resident to vacate this stretch. It was actually their request for it, so we haven't heard any complaint from any other outside sources to sway opinion to not vacate this stretch.
Did we do a public notice
Yes, we
and
did the
all
notice,
that? No.
the certified mail was sent out.
Okay. And we don't have to hold a public, like a vote to have a public protest and then close that vote and then,
That's why you're supposed to ask the questions when Mr. Jeter's here.
yeah.
I believe
that's
if
what
you
figured.
have I believe that changes, if you actually have protest after the notices are set out, that things change within the process. But since there was no,
Yeah.
no comments given, that it doesn't change and you can proceed.
Okay,
If the notice notified the affected landowners and the public to attend this meeting if they had concerns. And they also have a 1-year period after the road vacation to submit for damages. But as the landowner that is abutting both, the whole section of this is in favor of it, I do not expect any damages to be requested by the landowner.
sue himself.
Okay.
Okay,
If they had gone through a petition process, there would be an official road hearing, and
yeah, okay,
there's a lot more details. That's why it's recommended to do it by resolution, not by petition.
okay.
Well, then I move to approve resolution number 2025-06, vacating the county's right-of-way for St. Jacobs Street in Block 10 of Catherine, Kansas.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Might as well just stay there. I know you're not
Okay.
necessarily on there, but we got a discussion on 2025 road tour. And any input on what we already got listed.
I did have a discussion last evening with Darren. I would like on our way, because I know we're going over towards Ellis, and we're going to look at some structures over there to look at a couple mile section of 210th Avenue between Munger Road and Highway 40. So I'd like to add that on our,
Not Golf Course Road.
not golf course.
Okay, going further south?
I guess it would be golf course there.
Okay.
I'm trying to picture it in my head.
Yeah, golf course is where it turns back into
where it
normal.
levels off.
Yes.
Okay, so it'd be golf course and Highway 40?
And I
Which
have-
of these are, we got Hilltop and Leaker Edition, what other subdivisions or any of these other?
Reservation Road, I think Darren wrote that. So you've got 4U development, George Phillips, Big Creek 2. There's Buffalo Hills Trailer Park, Sunside. It's about 16 developments off Reservation Road.
Okay.
I'm guessing that is what Darren meant by Reservation Road area.
Okay.
And then you have the Liker Edition off 280th and 285th up there, and then Hilltop, which is Stonewood Estates North.
Okay.
And then we can go by Commerce Estates on our way through, which is on Commerce Parkway between 27th and 41st or Vineyard and Airbase.
Mm-hmm.
I do have, and this may go into one of the subdivisions, which is in Munger, but Old Highway 40 in Canterbury, which leads into Reservation Road, pretty ugly. Then also 280th south of Munger. That one also needs, so we don't lose it, but anyhow, I don't know when that is in the plan for getting redone, but it's getting pretty rough.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's
and
a
you know
section-
that.
There's a section of that roadway that is just a prime and seal. There's no true asphalt on it.
That's the smoothest one out there.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
It had, when the county reclaimed the roadway, it made a substantial base underneath it, just like Feedlot Road and like we're doing to Vineyard and Commerce and we're going to be doing to Catherine this year. It creates a stable base. A lot of these roads, when they were constructed back in the day, a lot of the oiled roads were just whatever was existing. And county came by and put a shot of oil on it and started building from there. So there's no real structure underneath those roadways. So they push, they move, and that's why we've been taking, with Commission's blessing, recycling these roadways to build a better road base for a road to support the traffic levels. Because when they were first oiled, the trucks and equipment weren't as big as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would too, from Old 40 in Canterbury going north, going to the school, put that on there also, Brandon, on the,
Okay.
in your route.
If we're talking some of the old 40 projects and stuff, maybe we need to take a look at that bypass between the 183 stoplight, blinking light, and over to Canterbury.
The Ys.
The
Coming
Y.
out. Yes.
That's,
So as Darren can into, that's something that we have earmarked for future, potentially a grant to redesign that.
okay.
Because those interchanges, they work, but they're not the best solution for there. There's a lot of confusion for people that
Okay.
are not from the area, which way they go, because there are a few one-ways on there, and we've had
Yep.
incidents where people go down the wrong way on a one-way.
Yep. So I guess we can drive through there and have a discussion
Yeah.
as we're passing through on some of our future plans.
Yeah, it's not something that's in the works for this year, but it's in our capital plan to potentially do something in the future, whether that
Okay.
is redesign or just reconstruct what's existing.
Okay.
And then the Catherine Road project, is that
on
also
the
on
list up here.
Toulon?
Yes, Toulon up to
Okay.
there. We'll drive. That's the only way
Yeah.
to get up there. I don't think we'll take 310th or something like that on the back road. Not in a rental van.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, have you reached out to Mayor Dave? Yeah, I talked to Mayor Dave about the 10th Street Bridge. He would certainly, he appreciates that we'll invite him, and they may themselves call a special meeting so that way they can attend as a city council. Have you reached out yet, or?
No, that was one of my questions, why it was the first on the list here is because Brendan will create the route after we get all the locations. But my question for that one specific is, do you want to start in Ellis, or would you like to have a break in Ellis so that way you can meet with Ellis staff to look at it and then have lunch in Ellis maybe to discuss it further with financials and the options for the bridge?
I like that option. We've had lunch here in town the last couple of years, and I think that would be a good change.
Yep.
Okay.
Meet there.
If that's the case, then I'll now contact them since we have kind of a time frame and see if that time for lunch will work for them all. maybe we'll stop, look at it first, and then proceed to a location for lunch to look at some estimates and information that Brendan has from Penco on regards to that bridge.
Okay. Speaking of bridges, will we have any updates on,
Inspection,
what do you?
inspection,
Huh?
the inspections on them? or-
No, I want to I'll call it Saline River Bridge north of Ellis,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
you have a different nomenclature for it, so.
FAS 120.
There you go.
Yes, so we'll be applying, we're expecting the grants for the KLVIP to be coming out this spring, so next month tentatively.
Okay.
It's historically when it's, before COVID, that was when it always came out.
So you're saying May or April? Because we're in April.
Well, yeah, April 1st.
Next month. changed
Tentatively,
today.
KDOT has told us to expect them in April.
Okay,
The application's opening with a closure end of April or sometime in May. They're not gonna close it before they open it, and they generally have those open for a period of 3 to 6 weeks.
okay.
Are we still, so I guess part of the discussion with them a little bit is, in the other bridge which is County Bridge, but it's right there on Ellis.
Yeah.
We'll consider using that as part of a closure with that
We
application.
can, yes.
Okay.
And there's another structure we have in our capital plan to replace this year that we've been able to get engineered down to actually a culvert. The drainage area doesn't require a bridge. So our intent is to, in the upcoming months, purchase a large 8-foot tall culvert with head walls to have it on the ground and ready to go if we're selected, and turn that bridge in for closure to replace it with a culvert.
Okay.
So we would have 2 or 3 bridges being replaced, almost 4, it could be 4 if we close that one as well, with one bridge grant, which will hopefully score us more points on the selection process. Because in their minds, they're replacing 4 bridges then with 1 grant.
Okay,
I think just for clarification there, just in case there's public listening, when Brendan says bridge closures, we're not closing a bridge, closing a road. It was just converting a bridge possibly to a culvert, or we're replacing the bridge, which would close the bridge temporarily, but the road would still be open. So that way
only one-
nobody thinks we're closing a road.
The only one that would be closed potentially would be the one on the south side of Ellis that Mr. Burgess alluded to. If the commission wants that direction on there.
okay.
Okay, off of that, is our excavator showed up yet?
No, not quite yet.
Okay.
They found a few things, nothing that was concerning to its operation, but things they wanted to replace before it came out here.
Okay.
So got it in, they're waiting on lines for the hydraulic system to run the thumb. And then they had a little bit of shop work they wanted to do to make sure everything was tip-top shape before it came out here.
Yeah.
Should expect it in about a week or so.
Okay. Brendan, for when we do our road tour, can you bring just kind of a small sheet along of our bridge plans of our program of what we're planning to
Yeah.
replace, and just so we have that fresh with us when we're going through this?
Yep. I'll just print out the capital plan because they're all right there.
Okay.
Say if the commission wants, at a previous meeting, the commission requested a map to show what the 2025 maintenance plan is for roads being overlaid and seal coated. I can pull it up right now and eliminate that on a future agenda if you just at least want to look at it. Like Brendan got it to me yesterday. I can send it to you. That way you can use it for communications with the public. If you just want to give me a second to pull it up, you can look
Okay.
at it.
So it follows our asphalt maintenance plan that's in the capital plan. There might be a few shifts as things have deteriorated rapidly, and we're still in the infancy of doing our maintenance.
Okay.
So that there might be a mile here or a mile there that may change, but our intention is to not change those at this point in time.
And while Darren's bringing all this up, Highway 40, I've driven it a number of times, but Highway 40 just to the east of Walker.
The panels,
Huh?
the panels.
Yes. On top of the hill, we're getting a pretty good break up there again.
Yeah. Nope. So those aren't asphalt roads. They're not on the
No.
asphalt plan, but they are something that we've been monitoring and addressing as they get more severe. That's, with that old concrete, there's generally not bars paneling them, connecting the panels together, so they shift and there's no expansion joints in that concrete. So it has nowhere to move, so it sometimes buckles or it sometimes breaks. We were very fortunate this past summer that we didn't have more blowouts than we did, but historically, we have 2 or 3 blowouts on that stretch of roadway from Victoria going east every summer. We had 1 last year only. But there's those 2 buckle panels east of Walker that we've been monitoring and addressing.
Okay. Go ahead.
So on the map there, the red is an overlay and seal. Because our cold mix, you have to put a seal coat over the top of it. And then the green lines are the seal coats. So the sealing is north. In the plan I wrote Ellis Avenue, because that's what most people know it as, is actually 130th Avenue. Up there, going up towards the Lean River. We have a small stretch there in Ellis now, and then a large section of Old 40 Highway. And then our overlays, most of our overlays were in the western part of the county last year. The overlays this year will be on Pfeiffer Avenue, Cathedral Avenue, north of Interstate. A portion of that we've already done, so we've shifted that little bit of mileage to Ballpark Road on the south end of Victoria and Washington Street in Ellis or Ellis Avenue. And then Catherine, 3 of those miles will be reconstructed. 1 will just have an overlay over the top as well. But there is a section of Toulon that we're monitoring just south of the curve, the Catherine curve. The north or southbound lane is starting to get wobbles in it. So that may be something that we address this year. It's in the plan to overlay that section in 26. So we'll monitor more, and if we can trade a mile this year from a location nearby. I don't want to trade miles if we don't have to, because it defeats the purpose of the plan, but as we're still in the infancy of it and trying to get our roads up to snuff, sometimes things have to change, unfortunately. But it wouldn't be like moving all equipment from one edge of the county to the other edge of the county. This would be just moving it 2 miles down the road.
Okay. On Toulon Avenue, I believe we have it looking at an expansion. I think you kind of alluded to that. That's part of our capital plan. Timeframe on that?
And that one is tied to a grant.
Okay.
So we have money in there. That would be our local match, because the entire project is considerably more than that to widen that roadway. And it's not widening the pavement, it's widening the shoulder.
Okay.
But with the culverts as deep down as they are, those would need to be replaced, or we've been looking into lining those culverts, because it's going to be a major delay and outage to replace those culverts with as deep as they are. And then in order to get 2 feet up top, adding shoulders to correct the slopes, you're going to have to go out quite a bit further. An additional right-of-way, construction right-of-way and potential permanent right-of-way will need to be acquired to install culverts to sufficient length to widen the roadway. So that one's got a lot of moving parts, and that one's in 27 and 28 to start the process.
Okay. Okay.
But we have our portion set aside in there, but that project is dependent on getting a grant for it.
Okay.
You've been successful over in that area, so hopefully
We've been very fortunate. We've gotten over $9 million in the few years I've been here, and we hope to keep getting more. We apply every grant cycle for things. Sometimes they select them, sometimes they don't, but it's great when we are selected.
And what's the state projects, all 183 all through the whole county from north
Pretty well.
clear to Rooks County?
Yes, from north of Hayes.
All the way.
They did south of Hayes last year.
Yeah, so,
The Highway 40 that we're
Well,
going
we're-
to, I'm sorry, Michael.
yeah, fine.
I was gonna say, the Highway 40 that we're gonna seal west of town, is that the first seal since the overlay, the
In
major
that
overlay?
portion, I believe so, for the entire stretch.
So
We
we're
did-
behind schedule on that.
It's a hot mix roadway, so that it can have a longer maintenance interval before you start these seal coats, but it's pushing it.
Okay. Okay.
There's portions that have been patched, things like that, but I don't believe there's been an entire seal coat on it
Okay.
in at least the last 7 years.
Got it.
We've done all the way up to Yosemite. This is doing from Ellis back to Yosemite.
Okay.
And then we did from the county line to Ellis, majority of that last year with patching and overlays.
Okay, very good.
back to the road that Mr. Liker said about the Old 40. Any idea what KDOT's doing on their stuff when they have blowouts? I know by Ellsworth, they just put asphalt back in. Is that something that we're looking at just for an expansion?
So we did that this past year. It's
Okay.
something I'm familiar with, coming from up north in northern Minnesota, where I lived at before coming here to Kansas. There are concrete highways. Every 1,000 feet or so had a section of asphalt. They had expansion joints in the concrete, but they also had that section of asphalt to be an area that could give, that they could mill off or fill back in. It also aided in the snow and ice buildup removal. So we did that just east of Victoria in a portion. We tried using our cold mix. It does not have enough strength with it fast enough to be able to open that to traffic, so we had to replace that with hot mix. And so far, there's been no new buckling in that area, but we'll have to see what the temperature does.
Okay.
But that's something we've been trying to explore, different options to create reliefs in the roadway as issues appear, and to give us other solutions, so if it, depending upon what time of the year the road breaks, we have options available to us. We could always use concrete, but they're back in the same problem. No expansion joint, no room for it to grow.
Right.
So the asphalt has a room where it may buckle upwards, but then we can mill that bump off. Just like we did on Old 40 Highway, where there's asphalt over the old concrete panels. Those panels shift over time, and that's why we had those humps from Hayes over to Victoria. You don't get that from Hayes going west to Ellis, because those panels were completely removed when they redid that section of roadway years ago.
Okay, and then again, I see the crew's been out patching holes in the concrete, which there's quite a few, so
Yep.
they're gaining, but
Road maintenance never ends.
nope.
I think we got it. Thank you.
We will, or Brendan will take all this, I'll send him the notes that I put from all the roads that you have, and then he'll put together the agenda for April 30th, which is a road tour. We'll start at 8:30 a.m. that morning, and then have lunch in Ellis and peruse through the county, look at these different sites.
Okay.
And then while we're there at Old 40, right in front of El Charo, and you see it, you drive across it, that concrete's getting ugly again.
Well, that's the panel that we replaced. We wanted to replace it in the springtime. We were directed to replace it early winter, late fall. Concrete's shrunk at that point, so when we put a new panel in, concrete was already at its smallest point for the year. So when the temperatures came up this year, that brand new panel is already cracked up because there's no room for that material to move. That's why we sometimes have to monitor things. They may not be the smoothest, but if we wait and do it at the right time, we end up with a better product. 'Cause
Yeah, 'cause
it shouldn't have a road buckle like that right after you fix it, but
that westbound lane is getting cracked up.
yep,
It's
that's the panel that we were directed to
Yep.
replace, and we had to cover it with blankets and heaters because it snowed on us. So there's sometimes, unfortunately, there are bumps in the road that unfortunately we have to live with for a period of time just to be able to do the treatment at the right time to get a better result.
right. It's
May-
just for the future. I'm
Yep.
looking at.
Yeah, works. Okay. Next topic on the agenda, Workforce One area merger.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brendan.
Morning, County Administrator Darren Myers. Your next item agenda is to proceed with a request from Deb Scheibler, believes the Director for the Workforce Development, or at least in our area. They had put together some legislation last year, and it was approved by the governor to take effect in January this year to combine the northwest and southwest regions of the workforce area, northwest, southwest of Kansas, I should say. And just for that agreement and for them to proceed, they're requesting the signatures for the different counties within those areas. So before you today is just essentially the Ellis County's portion of that to proceed with their merger of northwest and southwest Kansas.
I have no problems with that. I was actually on the Workforce One board when this all got presented, and the chair of the CEOB, the Chief Executive Operating Board. So I have full faith on what they're gonna do, and I think it's a good direction.
Yeah, I don't have any real concerns. I'm on the board now. I'm still trying to figure everything out. So it's all very, very technical and very government-driven, so.
So a majority of the Workforce One funding is derivative of federal funds.
Federal funding, yeah.
So when federal dollars are cut, they're budgetarily cut.
Mhm.
And the local, the board members, there's two separate boards. The CEOB, which is the chief elected officials, which is made up of county commissioners watching over federal dollars, and then also they have local workforce officers that help promote and find projects for those dollars to go to bring people into the workforce, to train people. So that's just a very general overview. They have a much longer definition, but that's the general overview of what the workforce does. And combining two areas is streamlining some of those funds.
If there would be no issues, we just ask the commission to sign that, and then Bobby will get that emailed back in to finalize it.
Okay.
Yeah, it works. Okay. Next, public safety radio booster installation. Again, Darren.
This item for consideration is to install essentially mini antennas in the basement of this facility. I actually meant to bring in my public safety radio so you could actually see what happens. I don't know if Danita has hers, but basically, it's just like a cell phone signal for the public safety radios. It's a little different, different spectrum in the broadband, but the radios do not work in this basement. They do not work in other facilities throughout Ellis County, for instance, some areas in the hospital, Fort Hays State buildings, in our law enforcement center. They actually don't work, but we have a similar type of device, the BDA booster, in that building, as well in the emergency services building on 22nd Street. So this has been a long time need. We put this in our capital plan starting last year for this year. And basically what it'll do is put little, sort of like that little cone there hanging from the center of the room. They'll be strategically placed based on hotspots within the basement. They'll all connected together to a device, and then cabling ran together and then up through the 2 floors onto the roof where an antenna will be installed up there as well to connect to the state KDOT radio system. The bids are just a couple $1,000s over what was budgeted. I didn't take into account, what I didn't know at that point was the amount of time, extra time that it was going to take to get the cabling ran from the basement up through different chutes and access points up onto the roof. And that's where the overestimate came for that the extra dollars set aside in the capital plan for this. It will not impact anything within the next 5 years within the capital plan for that line item, however. So with that, I'd ask the commission to approve, or I stand for any questions as well.
Okay. And this will be just for this room, or this room and?
I believe there will be 4 or 5 of those devices that are, they do like a heat map in the basement to make sure that it covers as much of an area as possible. But as you know, many of these walls are concrete as we separate through the basement, so they strategically place them so they link together and provide as much coverage as possible throughout the basement. One of those would not be sufficient. They might cover this main room, but they would not cover into over into IT or HR, the training room, et cetera.
Okay. Do you currently have, it's law enforcement, and okay, EMS building got it. Are there any other buildings that we're gonna have to look at doing this on that we currently utilize?
Not for Ellis County. This is the only Ellis County facility that does not have service within. Like I say, there are known two public safety people, I guess, law enforcement, fire, EMS. There are other buildings within the city probably even over in Ellis and Victoria, that there are places within buildings that, just because of the nature of the way they're constructed, that they have limited signal inside of.
Okay.
But those aren't anything that we could mandate or have them install those into those buildings.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. I'll move to approve PO number 7914 for the installation of public safety booster in the basement of the administrative center.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion, questions?
I just feel it's important to have it in here, that we've went this long without it. And, but, no, very supportive of it.
Oh, I guess I should say too, I appreciate Jeff Ridgway, our communications director, effort. He is the one that had met with First Wireless to try to find chutes and access from the basement to the roof and to get this bid put together. I was just the one that, he did the legwork. I'm just the one bringing it to the commission, asking for permission.
Okay.
With that, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. Next item, 2026 budget process.
I rethink this every single year, is to put this item as the last meeting agenda item. Is as the meeting has progressed, the last thing you want to probably do is look over numerous amounts of numbers and different types of how it impacts the county. But here we are again, and it's time to discuss our budget process moving in throughout 2025 for the 2026 budget. So I will just barely glimpse over what you've probably already read. There's no reason for me to repeat all this. Good news throughout these bullets, the revenues were 11% over what we had projected for 2024 for 2025's budget. That's not truly accurate that we're collecting 11% more. As the commission knows, the taxes that we collect in one year are the budget for the next. So helps fund the next year's budget. So part of that 11% are the collections that we collected last year for the amount of taxes that we needed for this year's budget. But one of the big pieces, which we'll talk about, or I guess I can just hit on it now, is the investments made by our county treasurer. As you can see, last year we only had, and I have an extra zero in there now that I look at it, we budgeted, or the county treasurer budgeted 1.1 million in revenues. He actually finished the year with 1.97 million, so 870,000 over what he had actually budgeted, which is great. That's about $1.5 million of extra money that we didn't have to use for property tax dollars. So the better that the county treasurer does with his investments throughout the year, the more money we have in the bank for capital is more money that he's able to sit idly and invest. And that helps us as we build our capital. It helps us build our budgets and not have to be so dependent, so to speak, on property tax dollars. For the expense side of it, you can see that after all budget transfers to capital throughout the year through all the departments, the county general budget came in 3.6 under budget. That's what you always want to see every year, is to be under budget. So that's the general fund, which maintains pretty much all departments within the county, except for the fire district and solid waste, and then your capital funds, et cetera. The reserve funds, as you can see, for Fund 6, which is what we use to save money to do future capital expenses for the next, well, the project we just got done completing was the Public Works facility. As the commission knows, for about 4 years, we put money away each year to build enough capital in reserve in Fund 6 to pay for the Public Works building without increasing taxes. That's what we started to do for the known remodel that is coming after the Hayes PD moves out of the law enforcement center. So that way the sheriff can expand his offices. So we're starting to save money, but that's a good example of future expense for that fund. As you well know, that Greg Erbert, our building and ground director, has created on his request a 10-year capital plan to ensure that we're looking farther out than just the next couple years, that we're looking out 10 years for those capital improvements, which would be HVAC, needs, roof needs, carpets, paints, ceiling tiles, different things like that throughout all the different buildings in the county. So that's what Fund 6 is. Fund 16, however, is our equipment reserve fund. That's for equipment for public works, vehicles, technology needs, software, et cetera. That's spread out. Last year, we had 1.27 million transferred into that, which is about average in the previous years. And as I don't need to go through all of those, but our capital plan is funded out through 5 years through all the different departments. So that has been a slight increase over the years as the commission has been more proactive than reactive in allowing departments to actually plan for their capital and then identify the needs, the funding needs that we need to transfer from different funds into that to help fund future years of those capital equipment needs. And then Fund 78, which is our highway fund, this is for road and bridge. As you can see, last year between insurance reimbursements, checks, grants, and our budgeted transfers from the general fund to that fund, it was 1.748 million. And as you know, the commission over the last 2 years, I believe, has requested Brendan to change that from a 5 to a 10-year plan. And so that 1.748 million that's transferred helps with those projects that a lot of what Brendan talked about today. The old 40Y intersection out there in front of Pepsi, the different road bridge projects, grants, matches for the 10th Street Bridge in Ellis, the Saline River Bridge, all those different types of larger projects that we have planned. The good news is we're at a point based on estimates, although we don't know what 10 years is going to be and what those prices will climb to. Nothing gets really cheaper in 10 years, and when you look at road and bridge projects. But the good news is that our 10-year capital plan for road and bridges are fully funded to complete all projects within that 10-year period, which is, I believe, the commission would agree is excellent. So that looks at our reserve funds. So we talked about that fourth bullet point already in regards to investments from our county treasurer. Looking at the sales tax collections for last year, we collected a total of $3.3 million between the two 1/4 cent sales tax. If the commission, or just as a reminder, we have 2 1/4 cent sales tax. One is for health services specifically, where Ellis County gets to keep 100% of those proceeds. The other 1/4 cent sales tax is for general fund needs. And because that is by statute, a sales tax that can be, we use it for road and bridge repairs. It's paying for the Northwest Business Corridor projects as well as some other small projects that when we first took that bond out. That is something that the cities of Ellis, Hayes, Victoria, Shinshin also do for their projects. We're required to split that out by statute, by law, in a certain funding formula. But those are our 2 sales taxes. Like I say, 3.3 million. Which is just under about $43,000 less than we collected in the year before, which between the two both varied to be between about 1.5% less collected sales tax than what we actually received the year before. Just for a quick update on that, although we were only 3 full months into, or 25% into 2025 here, we've rebounded at least for 3 months. It's not a good overall picture for what the year is going to look like. But the general tax that I say we split is up 1.34% for this year. And the healthcare tax that we get to keep that primarily funds health, High Plains Mental Health, and the EMS department is up 1.77% for 2025. And a key thing to point out there, that 3.3 million that we did collect, and if you equate that into or divide it by our county mill levy equivalent for the same budget year, that equates to 6 mills of property tax money that we do not have to collect. So in other words, by us having that sales tax in place that doesn't expire in 2030, we are able to collect or an equivalent of 6 mills of property tax. And that saves our county taxpayers money. Yes, our county taxpayers do pay sales tax, but I don't remember the exact percentages off my head. But the majority of sales tax collected in Hayes and in Ellis County because of our retail pull factor that we have, which is the third best in the state of Kansas, the majority of sales tax collected comes from residents outside of Ellis County. So that is a good way to offset those property taxes that we need to help fund improvements for Ellis County. And that's something that we need to continue to look at. We talked about it last week within our strategic plan, is that sunset does expire in 2030. So as we get closer to that point, we need to continue to remind the taxpayers of that sales tax importance. And if that sales tax vote does not get renewed, or the commission at that time does not want to pursue renewal in some fashion or another, there is a $3.3 million deficit there that we'll either have to offset with property taxes or reduction in services, et cetera. So that's a big chunk of money that would significantly impact and decrease the amount of what we can do, both, like I say, it primarily funds almost $2 million of that goes directly to the EMS department since it's specific, and the other portion of that goes to the health department. So there's some significant challenges coming up in the future on what that may look like. The last portion there to talk about is our employee health care fund. As the commission knows, back in 2020, the commission allowed the health insurance plan for Ellis County to come off the state employee health fund healthcare plan, and we moved to partially self-funded plan, which builds a capital reserve balance. This helps also with the treasurer to be able to invest these funds. But that fund has been used over the last couple of years to absorb the amount of increases that health insurance has climbed over the years, which the Wage and Benefits Committee has been very receptive to, and using those funds to give suggestions to the commission to absorb those increases. It's been pretty much flat over the last couple of years because the amount of increases that we put in there are offsetting or reducing the amount of increases that we have for health insurance. However, this year, due to the work of the Wage and Benefits and projections and things changing with our employee health insurance, that fund is actually starting to climb for the first time in 2 years by several $1,000s a month. So that's back on a positive trajectory as well. So with all that, that kind of kicks off our discussion for the 2026 budget as we prepare for that. We also, it was good timing having Eugene here today looking at the valuations. As you can tell from his presentation, he estimates that we're looking at this point earlier in the year of a 3% valuation increase, which would equate to, if the commission, which at a future meeting you'll give us direction as what you would like to see for 2026. But that valuation of 3%, if you kept the mill levy the same without trying to reduce, that would be about $550,000 to $600,000 in allowable growth. That's a very preliminary estimate, but when you're looking at a $30 million budget, that's not a lot of growth to allow from one year to the next. So the inflation rate, I believe, was already at 2.6, and COLA is about 2.4. So that's not much that we're going to have to expand. Definitely not expand services, but in a mode, I guess you would consider more sustainability from next year from this year. So with that, the final item on here is our budget calendar. It's very similar within a couple days on each line item for how we progress through this budget. We put this on so that way we create deadlines for staff, myself, for the commission, and for the general awareness to the public. I'd like to say that point one more time because after usually what happens, Bobby and I see this every single year, that the commissioners usually get the feedback on the budget and on the budget process, and how we build our budget. You get all that information after the budget's done, and we're at the point where it's too late to make any changes, or after the budget's already approved. So my point that I would make to the public is you can see on this budget calendar that it lists every single date that we have public meetings with the commission, and it's a several month process from April through August that the citizens can come in and visit with us all to get that feedback from the community as well. So with that, I ask that the commission would approve the budget calendar to kick off the 2026 budget process. Like I say, I apologize for putting all the numbers at the very end of the meeting.
On the calendar, so July 22nd is when we'll call a special meeting. Each of the department heads, as we've done in the past, they'll present to us one-on-one, kind of.
Yes, sir, and I apologize. I did put an asterisk on that because that's not a date that's actually set. As we get closer, it's kind of hard to set a date that far out in advance because things do change on everybody's calendar, but that is what I had tentatively set for us to meet, which is the same, I believe, the same week as last year.
Okay.
And I believe from our staff meetings, last year was the first year we did it in a full day instead of 2 half-days, which I believed everybody appreciated that, so I kept it the same as last year as well.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, it's a long day, but one full day just fits in my schedule better instead of trying to find 2 days and splitting it out. And
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in the mindset of working through it,
yeah.
so.
The only other question I have, September 9th, I know I will be out of town. I don't know if that's a revenue neutral hearing, public hearing.
You missed that one last year.
Did I?
I think so.
Maybe I did. So I don't know if, we have, the other two are here. I don't know if it makes any difference. I could certainly call in too if it's, needed, but I don't know if that date can change or not, or if it's.
I believe we could push that back, because it's not, the budget and finalization is not due to the county clerk until October 1st. And if we move it back, we would exceed the dates of publication and notice, so it only makes that notification period longer. I would be a little bit hesitant to move it up to September the 2nd, which may be even right around a holiday too, maybe. That might be Memorial Day weekend,
Right.
or Labor Day, I'm sorry.
I think I'm going September 2nd as well, so that really probably doesn't change anything as far as I'm concerned. I think I'm traveling those first weeks of September.
Yeah, Labor Day is
So-
the 1st of September.
Okay.
So if the
I think
commission,
I would be in favor if allowable by statute and everything, if we could push it back, I think we should.
that,
Just as long as we have a 10-day notice of publication from the hearing date to.
That would, the 16th.
that would
is
almost
still,
give us 3 weeks, so that it just makes that notification period longer, which doesn't hurt anything. We just can't shorten it up, which doesn't work either. So that's really, we can move that September 9th date to the 16th.
September 16th?
Yeah.
And this is fluid. We can always adjust as needed as we move throughout the year, but
Yeah.
just those last couple dates are, those are the ones that we can't really do a whole lot with, because those are, we need to get those publications out. We have to have the hearing on certain dates once they're posted, and we definitely have to have all that to the county clerk by the 1st.
Correct.
And as the commission knows, over the last week, especially the last week, this budget calendar was really going to be in flux based on what the state legislature was talking about on, it came out of the conference committee on House Bill 2125, but that was going to significantly alter local government's budget calendars, where, as you can see here, our final budget was going to be done essentially at the end of August. They wanted, I won't go into the details of that bill to get Bobby excited and everything, but basically for proper planning, for us to notify the citizens, which was going to trigger an election, they essentially wanted that date moved all the way up to June 1st, to June 15th, to exceed revenue neutral rates. And as we're sitting here now, April 1st to June 1st, to develop a budget with short notice, not knowing exactly how that was going to proceed, I would like to at least thank the House for not taking up that bill on the floor last week. And I hope they don't, in my opinion, for the veto session here coming up. It's very ill-written, in my opinion. It was going to be very detrimental to every local city and county and taxing district throughout the entire state that would put us backwards in the planning process and being able to allow staff and commissioners to prepare for future years' budgets. So I appreciate the House not taking that up, and hopefully that does not proceed this year.
I agree. Okay. Well, if we make that change, and I'm good with approving the budget, or the budget agenda then as presented. Sorry.
Yep, works for me.
Me also.
I will update that date and send out the calendar to everybody just so it's out there, and I'll eventually put those all on our calendars as well, just as reminders as we work through it.
Is there a way, like on that county website where this calendar could be, I guess, kind of
You could put it on
front
the-
and center? Is it up there like that?
I believe, I don't want to pull it might actually already be on there.
Okay.
Not
Right.
this year's, but it could have been last year's.
You know, I think we want public input. We always try to take it when we can, but I agree, we kind of hear it at the end when we've pretty much gone through all the steps and we're at an approvals process, and then we kind of hear that, hey, we need to cut budget, and we're kind of stuck with what we've done. So again, yeah, starting here in April, over the next several months, we certainly want to hear from public on their thought process.
And then one final comment on April 15th, which is 2 weeks from today. We'll just look for feedback as you can review the numbers that I kind of just went over as we start to consider the 2026 budget. If we'll just have an agenda item in 2 weeks for the commission to kind of give some direction back to myself, to the other elected officials in the county, as well as our staff on what you'd like to see, some of your goals, objectives, or reductions, increases, whatever those may be throughout our county budgets, to kind of give us that feedback in 2 weeks, so that way they have their direction and marching orders to proceed. And that will also be shared with the outside agencies that as the commissioner remembers, that money is set aside based on 3/10 of the mill for the agencies that now go to the Care Council, but we still have those other agencies that report to the commission in June. I will share that same sentiment with whatever direction you give me in 2 weeks with them, so they can prepare as well.
And just as a reminder, I know High Plains Mental Health has already sent out presentations that they are asking for more. So with the Crisis Intervention Center that they've spoken numerous times about.
That amount was about 75,000 in additional funds.
Correct. So that's one ask that's already been presented, more or less.
So just to kind of give you a little bit more food to thought, when I said that 3% growth evaluation is about 550,000, this is the third and final year of our agreement with the city of Hayes, as we created that road maintenance project that the city would start maintaining some of those roads around Ellis, or the city of Hayes, and we took on the dispatch center. So this is the final year of about an additional 330,000 that we will need to plan to tax for next year. This is that last year of that. So if you add 330,000 plus the 75,000, if the commission were to approve that for High Plains, that's already 400 of the $550,000 of keeping that mill levy flat. So that doesn't take into account health insurance. It doesn't take into account employee growth for salaries or any other inflationary costs throughout our budget. So I think that kind of says a lot right there, that there's not a lot of room.
Very good, okay. County Administrator report, you've done a lot of talking, got any more?
Just more numbers. April 8th, County Commission agenda next week will be canceled per the commission's request. As for the public's knowledge, it will be canceled as we will be in Washington DC speaking with our legislators out there to remind them of local needs in our area of Ellis County. That's all I have.
Very good.
We have, oh, go ahead.
No, you're-
I'll fill it in.
Okay.
I do have one question for you, Darren. I forgot to ask with the radio booster, when will that take place? When are they going to install that?
Public safety equipment, especially around the radio world, has gotten lots better in the lead time for ordering and receiving equipment. We purchased a radio in November of last year. We just got it installed 2 weeks ago, so there is several month lead time on different equipment like that, so I don't see that coming right away.
Okay.
But it may be several months out and then getting it onto their schedule. So I'm sorry, I do not have an exact date for that.
Okay, nope, that's fine, thank you.
Neil, any comments?
As far as commission reports, I did attend the school board meeting. Was interesting there. Then also on the Ellis County Planning and Development, I made that meeting also, and Michael was there. And I don't know if they've asked Mike in IT because they could not get the televised version of it that evening, so I don't know if there was anything brought to your attention, so, okay. And also I did go to, and this kind of goes back with the Ameritown, at Fort Hays, they had it was called Hiring Paths, where they're trying to get like the 12, 13-year-olds involved, and Sarah Wassinger's involved in that, which it kind of all, this morning hit all together, which was great to try to retain our kiddos here and as they become adults. Then I did go to the Hayes Chamber luncheon, and Options had talked there. They cover a lot of big area, and that mental health and abuse to children, wives, husband, that's a big thing. They put on a good presentation, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Nate?
All I have is, in addition to, we'll be out of town next week on April 8th, but on April 15th, we have the Employee Appreciation Barbecue that will be hosted out at the new Public Works facility. So forward to seeing all our employees on that day.
Yes, April is local government month, and that's kind of why we tying it together with local government month with our employee appreciation, because without them, we're not much of a government that will be able to do much. So we do have that coming up on the 15th.
I don't have much of a day yet. Attended the zoning board meeting, and again, I want to thank the ones that serve on that board. It's basically a volunteer board, and they're giving up their evenings in the months to come look at these requests and then get them to us, so I appreciate their time. And then I've talked about scouts before. Ellis County, the scouts here locally, there are 4 Eagle Scouts this year. I didn't write their names down, but congrats to them. I was able to attend one of the Eagle Scout ceremonies. It's the first Eagle Scout ceremony I've been to. It was a very nice ceremony, getting that young man's recognition for the work he's put into. And part of getting an Eagle Scout is a civics project toward the community. So congratulations to those 4 that got their Eagle. With that, we got an executive session.
We'll add one thing while Commissioner Younger's putting on his readers. I believe EMS is having a Fill the Ambulance campaign for a local food drive coming up. This Friday, April the 4th, I believe, from 4 to 7 p.m. They'll be located at both Dillons to accept food goods to support our local food pantry.
Very good, thank you. Okay, I move to Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session for 30 minutes under the following exceptions to the Kansas Open Meeting Act pursuant to non-elected personnel matter exceptions. The subject is personnel matter. Those attending are the commissioners, Mr. Mike Liker and Mr. Darren Myers. And we will go until 10:50.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second to go to executive session. Any conversation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, passes 3-0. come out of executive session at 10:58. No decisions were made. And we'll close the county commission meeting at 10:58.